The scorched remains of 32-year-old Derek Carter were discovered in the backyard of his Jacksonville, Florida home on July 12, 2021. The tragic events leading to this discovery began when Sarah Martinez, a resident of the Pine Grove Mobile Home Park, called 911 to report thick black smoke and a nauseating odor emanating from a nearby lot. The property was owned by Derek and his wife, 36-year-old Liza Carter, an Eastern European immigrant who worked part-time as a house cleaner. Derek was employed at a local warehouse. The couple had lived in the park for 8 years, generally keeping to themselves aside from frequent, loud arguments that the neighbors learned to ignore. Lieutenant James Morrison and his team from Engine 28 responded to the scene, where they encountered Liza Carter calmly attending to a large fire pit made of concrete blocks and metal sheets. The fire blazed over 3 feet high, producing dark, acrid smoke, with a smell that seasoned firefighters found deeply unsettling. The pit's careful construction suggested planning, rather than the haphazard burning of trash. Strangely, while managing the intense flames, Liza was simultaneously grilling chicken wings on a charcoal grill, as though it were a regular afternoon. Firefighter Michael Torres observed in his report that Liza seemed unusually composed and avoided eye contact with emergency personnel. The surreal combination of a roaring fire and casual barbecuing raised immediate suspicions among the crew. The situation escalated when firefighter David Chin approached the fire pit and spotted what appeared to be partially burned human remains. Recognizable as human body parts, this horrifying discovery led to an urgent call to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Lieutenant Morrison instructed his team to secure the area while awaiting law enforcement. Liza Carter offered no explanation and displayed no visible concern about the firefighters' arrival, which added to the team's unease. Detective Maria Rodriguez and forensic specialist Dr. Thomas Wright led the responding police team. Their examination confirmed the firefighters' grim findings. The fire pit had been burning for hours, fueled by accelerants, with empty gasoline containers found nearby. This setup, along with the pit's design, pointed to a deliberate effort to destroy evidence rather than a hasty, panic-driven act. Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Robert Patterson conducted a preliminary assessment on site, verifying the presence of human remains. The intense heat and accelerants had caused severe damage, requiring laboratory testing for formal identification. The remains were arranged in a way that suggested a disturbing level of forethought in the attempt to conceal the evidence. Throughout the investigation, Liza Carter remained by her grill, continuing to cook as law enforcement surrounded her. When Detective Rodriguez questioned her about the fire, Liza responded only with, "I'm just having a barbecue." This statement, recorded in the official police report, would later be crucial in understanding her state of mind. Her calm demeanor and rehearsed-sounding response raised immediate suspicions among investigators. The mobile crime scene unit meticulously collected evidence, including ash samples, soil residues, and the burned remains. Inside the Carters' home, investigators discovered blood spatter in the kitchen and signs of a recent cleaning attempt. A cast-iron frying pan in the sink bore traces of blood and hair, suggesting it had been used as a weapon. This evidence indicated that a violent confrontation occurred inside the house before the fire was started. As detectives dug deeper into the couple's history, a troubling pattern of domestic abuse surfaced. Derek Carter, employed at Southeast Distribution Center for 6 years, was described by his supervisor as a reliable worker who frequently took on overtime. However, his demeanor had noticeably shifted in recent months. Meanwhile, Liza, who immigrated from Croatia in 2010, worked sporadically as a cleaner for wealthy families in Jacksonville. She often complained about her husband's perceived laziness, despite his consistent employment. Financial records revealed that Liza controlled all household finances, including Derek's paychecks. Bank statements showed large cash withdrawals on payday, leaving little for basic expenses. The couple's relationship history painted a picture of control and isolation. Married in 2012 after Liza obtained her green card, They initially lived in a downtown apartment before moving to Pine Grove in 2013. Neighbors soon began noticing signs of trouble. Janet Williams, a neighbor of 7 years, recounted frequent violent arguments. "The walls are thin here," she told police. "You could hear things being thrown, glass breaking, and Liza screaming in both English and Croatian." Derek rarely raised his voice. Derek's co-workers at the distribution center also provided valuable insights. Team leader Carlos Ramirez noted that Derek often arrived at work with visible injuries. "He always had an excuse," Ramirez said, "like falling off a ladder or a forklift accident. But the injuries happened too often to believe." Security footage from the warehouse parking lot revealed Derek sleeping in his car before shifts, suggesting he sometimes fled his home to escape the violence. The abuse extended beyond physical harm. Surveillance footage from local businesses documented 07.14 multiple public confrontations where Liza berated Derek in front of others. A particularly disturbing incident recorded at a local grocery store showed Liza's slapping Derek across the face when he purchased the wrong brand of coffee, yet no bystanders intervened. Store employee Marcus Chin recalled, "People just looked away. I think everyone assumed that since he was bigger than her, it couldn't be abuse." Financial abuse played a significant role in maintaining control. Investigators discovered that Liza had opened multiple credit cards in Derek's. In July 2021, Derek Carter's life tragically ended under horrifying circumstances. His wife, Liza Carter, was implicated in a calculated and brutal crime. Over time, a disturbing pattern of control and abuse had emerged, with evidence showing how Liza had systematically isolated and monitored Derek, driving him into fear and desperation. Liza, who accumulated over $445,000 in debt, closely monitored Derek's communications, installing tracking software on his devices and often showing up at his workplace unannounced. Colleagues described how these visits left Derek visibly distressed and unable to concentrate. Originally from Michigan, Derek had no family nearby, and his contact with relatives declined significantly after his marriage. His childhood friend, Michael Brooks, noted that their conversations became infrequent and eventually stopped in 2019. During their last exchange, Derek attempted to confide in Brooks about his home life, but abruptly ended the call when Liza arrived. Text messages retrieved from Derek's phone showed he had sought help in the weeks before his death. Reaching out to a domestic violence hotline, he expressed fear for his life, but felt ashamed of his situation. "Who would believe me?" he wrote. "I'm a 6'2" man being abused by my wife. They'll laugh at me." Although Derek researched shelters for abuse victims, he hesitated to leave, fearing Liza's threats to have him deported despite his U.S. citizenship. On July 13, 2021, Derek visited the Jacksonville Police Department's Family Justice Center, where he shared his story during a 3-hour interview with Officer Sarah Thompson, who specialized in domestic violence cases. His statement revealed nearly a decade of abuse. Derek provided photos of injuries and hospital records, breaking his silence for the first time. One incident, 3 weeks prior, involved Liza striking him with a glass vase during an argument over grocery expenses, resulting in a concussion and requiring 12 stitches. Dr. James Chen, the attending physician, noted this was Derek's third concussion in 18 months. Nurse practitioner Maria Gonzalez had provided Derek with resources for abuse victims during that visit, marking the first time a medical professional directly addressed his situation. Derek's statement detailed the psychological abuse that accompanied the physical violence. He shared that Liza often told him no one would believe his claims and threatened to accuse him of forcing her into marriage. Recordings on Derek's phone captured Liza's threats, including one instance where she shouted, "I'll destroy your life if you ever try to leave me." Derek's decision to report the abuse followed a particularly violent incident on July 12th. Security footage from a neighbor's camera recorded Liza throwing boiling water at Derek as he left for work, causing second-degree burns on his arm. Encouraged by his supervisor, Mark Thompson, Derek finally sought help. Officer Thompson, recognizing the severity of the situation, immediately issued a protective order and provided Derek with information about shelters for male victims of abuse. She strongly advised against returning home, warning of increased danger after reporting abuse. However, Derek insisted on going back to retrieve personal items and check on his dog. Audio from a nearby security system captured part of the confrontation at their home. Liza's voice could be heard threatening Derek, calling him a pathetic excuse for a man. Derek was recorded pleading, "I just want to get my things and leave. Please, let's handle this properly." Forensic evidence later showed that the fatal attack occurred in the kitchen, where blood spatter patterns indicated Derek was struck from behind while gathering items. A cast-iron skillet found at the scene bore traces of Derek's blood and hair, along with Liza's fingerprints. The medical examiner concluded that Derek suffered 7 blows to the head and neck, with the first rendering him unconscious. Security footage showed Liza making 4 trips to a nearby gas station between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on July 15th, purchasing gasoline, firewood, lighter fluid, and matches. Receipts recovered from her belongings confirmed these purchases, pointing to a calculated effort to destroy evidence. Back at the mobile home, Liza initiated a thorough cleanup, using industrial-grade cleaners and bleach to eliminate blood evidence. She removed rugs and curtains, which were later found partially burned in the fire pit. Despite her efforts, forensic specialists uncovered blood spatter on the ceiling and behind appliances, piecing together the violent events. At approximately 5:30 a.m., security cameras captured Liza, dragging a large carpet-wrapped bundle from the house. Investigators later identified the bundle as Derek's body, wrapped in a beige area rug matching fibers found in the living room. Footage showed Liza gathering materials to construct a fire pit in the backyard. Using concrete blocks and metal sheets, she built a structure designed to maximize heat while minimizing smoke visibility. The fire pit's design and placement demonstrated deliberate planning, with metal sheets angled to direct smoke upward. Investigators discovered recent searches on Liza's phone about cremation temperatures and body disposal methods. Liza's meticulous actions in the hours following Derek's death, including the purchase of supplies and construction of the fire pit, highlighted her intention to conceal the crime. The tragedy, occurring less than 2 days after Derek sought help, exposed critical flaws in domestic violence response systems, particularly the heightened risk victims face immediately after reporting abuse. Between 6:01 a.m. and 2:47 p.m., when firefighters arrived, Liza sustained the fire's intense heat by frequently adding accelerants. Using a metal rake, she systematically shifted the remains, later found by investigators with tissue and bone fragments still attached. The medical examiner's report highlighted that the deliberate placement and movement of the remains suggested an effort to obliterate identifying features. Most disturbingly, Liza attempted to mask the unmistakable odor of burning human flesh by creating a smokescreen. At 11 a.m., she began what appeared to be a casual barbecue. Setting up a charcoal grill visible to neighbors, she started cooking chicken wings. The investigators were particularly unsettled by this act, as evidence showed she had purchased the wings the day before, indicating a premeditated attempt to establish a barbecue alibi. Her cover-up extended beyond physical evidence. Cell phone records revealed that, while tending the fire, Liza sent texts from Derek's phone to his supervisor, claiming he had a family emergency in Michigan. Additionally, she used his social media accounts to post pre-written updates to make it seem as though he was alive and had voluntarily left. Inside the mobile home, detectives uncovered evidence of her attempts to stage an abandoned residence. Some of Derek's clothes and personal items had been partially packed, as if to suggest he had departed willingly. However, the disorganized packing, combined with bloodstains and signs of a struggle, contradicted this narrative. Investigators also found significant amounts of cleaning supplies and multiple empty bleach containers in the trash. Despite her use of industrial cleaners, luminol testing uncovered substantial traces of blood throughout the kitchen. The cleaning patterns, though thorough, were rushed, implying she was under time constraints while trying to erase evidence. Perhaps most incriminating was what Liza failed to destroy. In a closet, investigators discovered a box containing years' worth of medical records documenting Derek's injuries, along with handwritten notes outlining potential excuses for those injuries. These records, seemingly kept to control Derek, ultimately became key evidence of the prolonged abuse he endured. Detective Maria Rodriguez led Liza's interrogation at the Jacksonville Police Department on the evening of July 15, 2021. Over the 6-hour interview, the carefully calculated nature of the crime and cover-up became evident. Initially, Liza feigned ignorance, presenting a crafted story that Derek had left for Michigan to address a family emergency. During the first 2 hours, she displayed remarkable composure, recounting fabricated conversations with Derek about his plans to leave. She also pointed to packed bags at their home as proof of his departure. However, her narrative unraveled when detectives presented surveillance footage showing her multiple trips to purchase gasoline and other accelerants. The turning point came when Rodriguez showed her blood spatter evidence from their kitchen. The forensic findings revealed blood patterns on the walls and ceiling, consistent with multiple blows to a standing victim who then collapsed. Faced with this evidence, Liza's calm exterior broke. Her initial claim of self-defense fell apart, as the evidence indicated Derek had been attacked from behind while in a non-threatening position. Despite her efforts to destroy evidence, critical forensic findings were retrieved from the remains. Bone fragments showed clear signs of repeated blunt force trauma, matching the cast-iron skillet found in the kitchen. Dr. Robert Patterson, the medical examiner, identified 7 distinct impact wounds on the skull fragments, indicating a prolonged assault rather than a single defensive strike. Financial records further demonstrated premeditation. Liza withdrew $112,000 from their joint accounts in the 3 days before Derek's death. Investigators also uncovered a recently purchased bus ticket to Miami, under an alias, pointing to an escape plan. Her passport, hidden in her car along with the withdrawn cash, suggested she intended to leave the country. The investigation extended to interviews with Derek's co-workers at the Southeast Distribution Center. Their accounts painted a picture of escalating abuse. Security guard Thomas Martinez provided footage of Liza's increasingly frequent and aggressive appearances at Derek's workplace. In one instance, captured a week before the murder, she physically prevented Derek from entering the building, causing him to miss his shift. Medical professionals who treated Derek over the years came forward with detailed records. Dr. Sarah Andrews, who cared for Derek at Memorial Hospital, documented 17 emergency room visits between 2008 and 2021. The injuries, though attributed by Derek to workplace accidents, were consistent with domestic abuse. These hospital records, accompanied by photographs and descriptions, helped establish a timeline of worsening violence. Prosecutors built their case on the premeditated nature of the murder. Evidence showed Liza began planning shortly after learning about Derek's report of domestic abuse. Her preparation included crafting an alibi, acquiring materials for body disposal, and arranging an escape route. The prosecution also highlighted how she maintained control over Derek throughout their relationship, using financial manipulation, isolation, and threats to ensure he felt trapped. On July 18, 2021, the state attorney's office officially charged Liza Carter with first-degree murder, upgrading the initial charge of second-degree murder based on evidence of premeditation. Additional charges included tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and abuse of a corpse. The investigation revealed not only a domestic homicide, but also a carefully planned murder that exposed deeper societal issues regarding the recognition and response to male victims of domestic violence. The trial began on January 15, 2022, at the Duval County Courthouse, drawing national attention to the overlooked issue of domestic violence against men. State Prosecutor Amanda Reynolds opened the trial with a compelling presentation of evidence, including a chilling 911 call from Derek 2 days before his death, in which he quietly pleaded for help while hiding in a workplace bathroom. Over the 3-week trial, the prosecution systematically dismantled Liza's self-defense claim. Forensic expert Dr. Michael Harrison testified that blood spatter and wound patterns proved Derek was attacked from behind while posing no threat. The 7 distinct head injuries inflicted on Derek were particularly damaging to the defense's argument of a singular act of self-defense. Defense attorney James Mitchell attempted to cast Liza as a victim of her own troubled past, referencing her difficult upbringing in Croatia and the hardships she faced as an immigrant. However, this approach backfired when prosecutors presented evidence of her deliberate misuse of the immigration system, including threats to falsely accuse Derek of immigration fraud, despite his American citizenship. One of the most compelling testimonies came from Dr. Rachel Stevens, an expert on domestic violence, who highlighted the unique obstacles male victims face. She explained how societal pressures surrounding masculinity often deter men from seeking help, citing data that shows male victims take, on average, 6 years longer than women to report abuse. Derek's case, she noted, showed classic signs of domestic violence, including financial control, isolation, and worsening physical attacks. The jury was visibly affected by emotional statements from Derek's family. His sister, Catherine Carter, shared how she had noticed bruises during their video calls but accepted Derek's explanations of workplace injuries. "I failed him," she tearfully admitted during her testimony. "We all failed him by believing his excuses because we couldn't imagine a man being abused by his wife." On February 4, 2022, after only 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. They found Liza Carter guilty of first-degree murder, rejecting the defense's push for a lesser charge of second-degree murder. She was also convicted of tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and abuse of a corpse. Judge Robert Matthews sentenced her to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, citing the premeditated nature of the crime and her lack of remorse. The publicity surrounding the trial led to a notable increase in male domestic violence survivors coming forward. Local domestic violence organizations reported a rise in male victims seeking support. Jacksonville's Men's Domestic Violence Shelter, established in Derek's memory, provided assistance to over 200 men in its first year. Support groups specifically for male victims also began forming across Florida, helping to dismantle the stigma that had kept so many silent. For Derek's family, the conviction brought mixed feelings. While they were thankful for justice, they continued to grapple with guilt over failing to notice the signs of abuse sooner. To honor Derek's memory, his sister Catherine founded the Derek Carter Foundation. The organization offers resources to male victims of domestic violence and seeks to raise awareness about gender stereotypes and abuse prevention. As one juror reflected during a media interview, "This case changed how I view domestic violence. It made me realize that anyone can be a victim, and that everyone deserves to be heard and protected." Derek's story, though tragic, became a catalyst for change, breaking the silence surrounding male domestic violence and saving lives in the process.